I'm Jim Moran, Director of Outreach here at the American Antiquarian Society, and I want to share with you one of our great treasures. This is a color chromolithograph of the Boston Massacre created by John Bufford from a drawing by William Champney. Let's take a closer look at it. We see a street scene. We see a street scene that looks like it's actually taking place during the day. It's daylight with clouds and a light blue sky. We see at the center of this image the old Boston State House with its emblems of British authority, the Royal British Lions and crests on the front of the building. We see large buildings on either side. These also contain balconies with people actually shooting from those balconies on the left-hand side of the image and people observing on the right-hand balcony. This is actually a quite accurate description of what happened on March 5th, 1770. This black man is Crispus Attucks. And Crispus Attucks was actually a mulatto. He was part Native American, part African American, and in all likelihood also had some white blood in him. He was a former slave from Framingham, Massachusetts. He was also a very tall, 6'2", strong, imposing man. I think if we were to cast him in a movie today, we would probably cast James Earl Jones in the role of Crispus Attucks because he was a big, powerful man, and he worked as a sailor and as a dock worker. And one of the problems that Bostonians had with the British regulars is that in their off hours, they would go and seek employment out into the city. And they would particularly go to the docks and look for work unloading ships or working around the docks in cheap, hard labor professions. But of course, they already had a job. They were paid as soldiers. They were clothed and fed as soldiers. So they would work for much less money than the Boston citizens who were doing that same sort of work. So in essence, they were undercutting that labor force. And it created a lot of hard feelings among dock workers and sailors like Crispus Attucks. In fact, Crispus Attucks is part of a confrontation that happens at Gray's rope walk 2 days before this event. And people on both sides, at Gray's rope walk, there was a fist fight between off-duty soldiers and various laborers. And both sides vowed to seek revenge. And in fact, Crispus Attucks comes to this event with a club in his hand and provokes the soldiers. He and others are looking for a way to get even, if you will. They really provoke what will become a snowball fight that gets out of hand. It's essentially a riot that's full of confusion. Captain Preston, does try to stop the violence from happening. At one point he is hit by Crispus Attucks. I don't know that he actually ever fell down, but he certainly was not delivering any order to attack as is depicted in other images like Paul Revere's Boston Massacre. You can see the confusion that is going on here with people running around and falling. This is very much a primary source, and in many ways it's a primary source that is more accurate to the Boston Massacre than other sources such as Paul Revere's Boston Massacre that was created just 3 weeks after the Boston Massacre itself. This image, however, was not created in 1770. In fact, this image was created in 1857 and was probably sold through the late 1850s and through the Civil War. This is an image that is supporting the anti-slavery movement, particularly the responses to the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, which forced people in the North to return fugitive slaves to the South. It is right after a very famous incident where a free man was forcibly returned to the South in Boston, Anthony Burns, and it resulted in a similar riot in Boston. And this image is basically saying, in the cradle of liberty, where the first blows of the American Revolution, which was the Boston Massacre of 1770, we are seeing the death of a black man. We are seeing the first martyr of the American Revolution, Crispus Attucks. And he is clearly portrayed as a martyr here. He's pointing up to heaven, essentially. He is grasping this musket and really almost instigating his own death as a martyr would. And Crispus Attucks was a real person and was a real black person who did die in the original Boston Massacre. So this is a way for abolitionists and free blacks of the North to say we have a major role to play in the story of American freedom, and that we are now want to play a role in freeing black people from slavery. It will be used as an image that will further enforce the desire for black troops to be mustered into the Northern Army, and as a recruitment tool once that that takes place, and will be a powerful tool for that kind of recruitment and solidity around the anti-slavery movement in the mid-19th century. So it is clearly a primary source. It's just not a primary source of the Boston Massacre itself.